My property journey definitely started off from investing, and I was investing at the start. There is a culture norm in my family that, you need to buy a house to live in. And so
Mm.
I lived pretty much all across, various different parts of Australia. I was in Melbourne first and then moved to Sydney, lived in Adelaide, lived in Brisbane, came back to Sydney, then moved back to Melbourne. And, that was that last round when I actually ended up buying a property. And it's a funny story. I did all of these rounds around, looking at various different properties, building my portfolio. But my wife was always sort of that opinion that, this guy makes me move all the time, right? And so my trigger point for me was, having the first kid, right? That was the trigger point. And so as soon as the first kid happened, I moved back to Melbourne and the kid was still 1.5, 2 years old. And my wife is like, I'm not going to move. This is it, and so one last move,
Yeah.
right? And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I was still like, we're renting. The owner is a great friend of mine. He's given us 2 years lease. Why do we need to move, right? Because I would always go for longer lease terms so that, I'm not in that mercy of the
Yeah.
landlord to kick me out. When I came back to Melbourne, I think 6 to 8 months in Melbourne, this is going back 2016, 15, I think. No, 2017 actually, when I bought my property to live in. I was walking down this, I was passing through that particular road and I saw this property dead. No one was there. It was an open house with one of those, rain white flag, out there, one,
No.
smartly dressed agent. And I walked inside the property and I literally walked out and I was like, wow, this is like, it was terrible, terrible property. It smelled, it was just awful looking. And I was like, okay, interesting. And so I asked him one of those brochures and I checked out his brochure and I looked at the floor plan. And so the developer in me, that's what it does, right? It looks at the floor plans. And I fall in love with the floor plan. I was like, wow, this is an awesome floor plan. And so I was thinking, okay, if I can buy this house at, around, $500,000 mark, I can flip this at 680, 720, make a quick buck and exit, right? No idea of thinking or living there, right? And so I make an offer, a random offer to the agent. The agent laughs me off and says, see you later, because I started off at 480 and he was laughing. And this is 2017. The market was still doing relatively well. It wasn't off the cliff at this stage, but he had no interest because the property was in stage. It was terrible looking property, all of that. 2 days later, he calls me and says, look, there was a property that sold literally, on the same street for around, I think 575, 580 or something like that. And he said, can you make a better offer? And I said, okay, I'll make you a walkaway offer of 510. And he called me like literally 2 hours later. He said, it's accepted, right? And so now I haven't told anyone, right? Usually I'll tell my family that I'm buying a property. This is one of those, spur of a moment, and that, okay, this guy is buying a property. And so I took my wife for a drive. I still remember my father-in-law was here. I took them for a drive, stopped outside a real estate office, went in there, signed the contract, came out, and she's like, what were you doing there? And I was like, oh, I bought a house. And she's like, what? Why didn't you tell me? I was like, oh, I'll come around. I'll take you to show it to you. And so I took both of them to, show the house. And they just like any square they could think of, they would just, it was going off, right? Who buys this crap? Who buys this, shitty looking house? What are you going to do with this? And I said, look, you're not going to live here anywhere, right? So this is my pet project. I'm going to finish this off. And off we go from there. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And so my parents were there at that time as well. And so they were keen to come out and have a look at the property. And so it's like, okay, this was my, I think, third or fourth property in Melbourne, excited. They came out, have a look at the property, very close to my brother's house, by the way. They came out, looked at the property and same result, a lot of swears, a lot of, this guy's an idiot, I don't know what he's doing with his life. It's like, okay, that's fine. No problem. Forget about this, right? 3-month settlement. I settled the house. I brought the tradies in for almost 3 weeks. I did pretty much everything. Redid the kitchen, the bathrooms, a bit of renovation there, the flooring, the paints, etc. All of the shenanigans, right? Got the house valued at 720 and I was ready to flip. And I was like, okay, how about I show the after to the wife and the parents, right? And I think that was the mistake. I don't know if it's a mistake. If my wife is listening to me, I'm really sorry. I'm calling it a mistake. But in hindsight, it's a good decision. So I brought them into the house thinking that, okay, I'm going to sell this. And so she comes in, she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is like brand new kitchen, brand new house, brand new house smell, awesome backyard, awesome front yard. She's like, I'm going to live here. This is it. This was my last move and I'm going to move here. I'm going to live here. I was like, okay. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
and that's what we did. We ended up living, we still live there. 2017 is when I bought that place. 2023 we are in right now, 5 years in the track. The house probably ended up costing me an extra $35,000-$40,000 that I spent on the renovation. I think about $50,000 because, I did pretty much all of it myself. The valuation of the house, around over $1 million right now in today's time, right? And so in hindsight,
Right.
would I have done it
Right.
any differently? No, I think that was a perfect opportunity to basically create the value yourself while you're moving into the principal place of residence. And so
Yeah.
I tend to teach a lot of people that do that, buy an ugly house on the best street in the best location, spend 30, 40, 50, even $100,000 on that house, manufacture equity and call it a home.